Welcome to the Lessons for Luca podcast. I'm your host, Michael DeSanti, author of New Man Emerging, transformational trainer and coach, and most importantly, I'm Luca's dad. I was saying in the previous episode, that the main foundation and philosophy of this endeavor, creating this podcast, is to be in the discovery and the exploration of what does it mean to be a good man and what does it mean to live a good life. And these are the philosophies and the principles and the blueprints that I really want to pass on to my son. So as he grows, he has these foundations, he has this blueprint, he has this example that he can live into. I don't want to say live up to, I want to say live into. That so much of our blueprints and of our constitution and of so much of who we are is it's an evolving philosophy, it's an evolving blueprint, it's an evolving document and conversation that we live our lives by. So I said in the last episode, in our quest to become a great man, don't forget to be a good man first. And I want to use that and reiterate that and repeat that because I think so many times the blueprint for us as men in our culture is just over focus and over esteem ambition, and somehow that's going to fix everything around us. It's going to fill up all of our cups. Just go make a ton of money, make a ton of material, and then somehow that's going to fix your relationships and it's going to fix your health. And what we found is that the opposite of that is true. And I think that it's important that we be a good man first. Be a good man long enough and you'll become a great man. But what does that mean? What's the blueprint to that? What's the barometer that we set? And that's a big part of what this podcast and what these conversations are going to be about. Is I want to set and create a blueprint for my son and for men out there that give us a barometer of what it means to be a good man, what the value of being a good man is, what the aspiration of being a good man is. And like I said earlier, you be a good man for long enough, you'll be great. That has to be, in my opinion, that has to be the sequence. Be a good man first, be a great man second. When we're a great man first, I think what starts to happen is you start to see that, okay, I'm this great man in the world, but the people closest to me in my inner circle are struggling and craving my time, my love, my attention, my energy. There's no sense in being a great man and your marriage is falling apart. There's no sense in being a great man and your kids crave your presence because you're never around. To me, that is a splinter in the foundation of fulfillment. I want to be a good man first. I want to be a good man first. I want to be a good man long enough that my goodness just simply becomes great. And I think that's a blueprint and a navigation system that we really need to instill into men, and especially even into younger men. We want to make sure that, and I'll go further into this later, we want to make sure that all of the domains of our life are requiring the appropriate amount, receiving the appropriate amount of love and attention. We're at this critical point in our culture right now where things are evolving, and they're evolving really quickly, and they've evolved really quickly, and I would say they've evolved very foundationally and very quickly for women, but there's been a greater strategy and blueprint to that. And I think for men, as the world is evolving and our culture is evolving, we don't have the blueprint to evolve with it. And I don't think it's no secret. Our men are struggling right now. Men are far more likely to be incarcerated. Men are far more likely to be depressed and lonely and isolated. Men are far more likely to drop out of school. Men are far more likely to, as they get older, to have a diminishing amount of relationships and friends. And I want to be clear that this isn't, we're not playing a zero-sum game here. In order for our women to strive and thrive, I think is absolutely amazing and excellent. And we get to encourage our men to strive and thrive as well. It doesn't need to be one or the other. It doesn't need to be pro masculinity and pro man does not mean that we need to be, and nor should we be, anti-femininity and anti-women. What we need, and to be clear and obvious, we need each other, and we can all win. The goal is to create a win-win. It's not to choose what is best, what's better than the other. It's a opportunity for us, I think, as a culture, is to really harmonize where we are most effective together. That doesn't mean choose one or the other, or that one is better than the other. It means, how do we coexist and communicate in a way that our intention, at the heart of our intention, is always to create a win-win. And so over the last few decades, we're watching the deterioration of our men in culture and society, simply because I think that what used to work isn't working anymore. And that's part of evolution. That's part of growth. That certain things that used to be an asset to me, maybe they're now a liability. If I want to climb that mountain in front of me, but there's a giant lake that I'm standing on, a canoe to get across the lake is a massive asset. Once I'm across the lake, carrying that canoe up the mountain now becomes a huge liability. So what works for certain seasons of our life may not work in a new season of life. What worked in an old part of our culture and an old part of our seasonal conversation as a culture may be outdated. We may have grown and evolved past it. So a big part of my intention here is to create a new way of communicating, a new way of living, a new way of evolving, and a new way of an effective blueprint for not only for my son, but for men in our culture. I think there's a challenge right now, because as we're evolving and we're growing, and we're at these friction points, and I think one of the challenges for men today in this navigation and definition of being a good man is our options are limited. Typically, our options are to the extremes, and those are really extreme stereotypes. On one extreme, you have, we've got the bully, the misogynistic, the cold, the emotionally unavailable, might is right, and I'll get what I want by force. We have that option of stereotypical masculinity. And then to the other end of the extreme, we have this other option of the nice guy who just has to be liked by everyone, who's spineless and who is dramatic and who is overly sensitive and overly emotional. And I don't think either option is really that appealing. I think most men are, and even crave, the option of a healthy middle, a healthy balance and harmony between, when do I step into what I call, when do I bring the hammer and when do I bring the rose? When do I bring logic and reason, and when do I bring emotionality and, being more heart-centered? That doesn't mean I have to go to choose one and live there all of my life, because that's going to actually make me incredibly one-dimensional. I think a harmonized man and a healed man and a good man stands at that center and has access to both, head and heart, hammer and rose. That I write this in my book, that I live by a mantra of, what is this moment calling forth from me? And sometimes this moment is calling forth logic and reason and more of those masculine traits. And sometimes the moment is calling forth, heart and emotionality and those feminine traits. I want to have access to both. I want to have accessibility to both if I only live in my head, life is going to become over time a very anxious chess match. And if I only live in my heart and in my emotionality, life is going to be a really like feelings-driven, chaotic mess. The extremes don't work. Extremes are unsustainable. As we heal and as we harmonize, we can then stay centered and grounded and sturdy, and then access what's needed and when. And that really leads me to my definition of a good man. A good man is fully engaged in his life. He's a contribution to those around him, and he's in possession of himself. And we could spend hours on breaking that definition down, and we will. We'll spend episodes on it. But again, to redefine it or to define that, what I believe a good man is fully engaged in his life. He's a contribution to those around him, and he is in possession of himself. So a good man is fully engaged in his life. He gives his time, his love, and his energy to the things that matter the most, what I call a nucleus. What is the nucleus of my life? Who gets and receives the lion's share of my time, love, and energy, what I call your three commodities. They're your three greatest commodities because time, love, and energy, because ask anyone on their deathbed. They'll do anything to get those three things back: time, love, energy. So a good man is fully engaged in his life, fully engaged in the giving and receiving of time, love, and energy. He's also a contribution to those around him, meaning that his life is generative. His life has value. He contributes that value. He knows that value of himself, and he contributes that value because it makes a positive impact and it makes a legacy for those around him, even after he's gone. And a good man is in possession of himself. What that means is that he's non-reactive. He's responsive. He's present. He's engaged. He's not driven by his wounds of yesterday and his old reactivities that are on automatic and on autopilot. He's actually present. He's done the work to be present here and now. He's in possession of himself. He's in possession of his thinking. He's in possession of his emotions. He's in possession of his deeper purpose and vision in life. The way that I coach that and carve that out for my clients, for the men that I coach, is there's four fundamentals of a good man. There's four foundations of a good man. And the way that I break that down is a good man has presence, priority, philosophy, and purpose. Again, a good man has presence, priority, philosophy, and purpose. Those are the four foundations of a good man. And we'll go deeper into that in future episodes, but I just want to highlight and define them for this episode here so that when we see or when we endeavor to be a good man, that we actually have a strategic barometer and blueprint of what that looks like, a strategic barometer of where I'm aimed at and where I'm being effective or ineffective. So let me break these four down briefly, and then we'll spend an episode each on all of them. But remember, it's presence, it's priority, it's philosophy, and it's purpose. Presence. A good man has presence because this is actually where we're in possession of ourselves. Presence is the choice and ability to be here and now, that I choose to be here and now, that I'm engaged in this moment. I'm engaged in this very opportunity of now, engaged in my own experience and engaged in the experience of those that are around me. But presence comes really from doing the deeper inner work. By doing deeper inner work, what I call point of origin work is the ability to look back in my personal history, look back in my point of origin, and really excavate old wounds, old traumas, old dynamics that no longer serve me. Maybe I picked them up along the way in my family dynamic. Maybe I had life-defining events, life-defining dynamics, traumas, disappointments, heartbreaks, and wounds that have made or left imprints on my life, on my emotionality, on my psyche, that have made imprints that have affected the way that I interact and interface with the world today. That they've made imprints on my belief system, and that belief system has affected my behavior. And so what happens is if I'm unwilling to do my point of origin work and excavate some of those old blockages and obstructions of my yesterday, of my personal history, some of the things that maybe we have picked up from our parents or lack thereof, maybe our parents were abusive or absent, or all of that point of origin work that has kind of shaped our worldview when we're young. If we don't challenge or question or check some of that old point of origin, it's going to actually obstruct me from being fully present and engaged in my life here and now. I'll actually have old obstructions and old belief systems and old behaviors that I used as coping mechanisms when I was young that are actually sabotaging my success in my financial well-being, sabotaging my success in my marriage, sabotaging my success with fatherhood, with friendships, because I've developed these belief systems when I was young that, people aren't to be trusted. Life is hard. People let you down. Don't let them see you cry. Don't let them see you sweat. And those belief systems that we pick up when we're young, those belief systems generate our behaviors. And those behaviors we practice over and over again. And we end up unconsciously self-sabotaging our present moment, our present relationships, our present success, because so many of those old point of origin beliefs and behaviors are on automatic, on reactive, and on autopilot here and now. And it requires a tremendous amount of courage and effort and willingness and earnestness to go back in my point of origin and excavate some of that so I could live from that foundational, fundamental pillar of being a good man, which is being present. When we excavate and when we clear out those old obstructions of our personal history, we have a massive opportunity to be present and engaged here and now. We also have a new massive opportunity to generate a whole new future that's intentional, deliberate, and purposeful. We can't do that if we are constantly poisoning upstream of our life. We've got to get to that point of origin, not as a matter of unpacking and living there and becoming a victim to it, but as a matter of awareness to go into that point of origin and really gain a new perspective of, I could see why my worldview is shaped this way, my belief system is shaped this way, and my behavior is shaped this way. If I want something new, I've got to be willing to challenge that old worldview and that old point of origin. And a good man has the courage, the willingness, and the earnestness, and the humility to do that presence work, to do that point of origin work, and make sure that a fundamental foundation of his as a good man is presence. And that presence doesn't necessarily just come from, okay, I'm going to start all over right now. Let me be present here now. There's too much influence from yesterday, too much influence from upstream. So the courage to do that inner work is a fundamental necessity of a good man. The second fundamental of a good man, the second foundation of a good man is priority. Simple way of putting that, boys are preoccupied, men are prioritized. And the way that we operate that is we break down priority into what I call domains. A domain is anything in life that requires your love and attention. Your family is a domain. Your financial well-being is a domain. Your health is a domain. Your spiritual life is a domain. Your leisure is a domain. Your relationships are a domain. They require love and attention. And if you want to harm your domains, just ignore them. And too often men are encouraged, like, just value one domain, value the success domain, value the financial domain, and somehow that's going to fix all your other domains. And we've proven over and over again, it doesn't work. It's unsustainable. If I think a big call for men and masculinity of today is to shift from being one-dimensional to being dynamic. And to be dynamic means that all of the domains in my life that require love and attention, they receive them. That fundamentally as a man, I have the bandwidth to be dynamic enough that not only do I provide financial stability for my family, but I also prioritize my health. Not only do I show the love and affection and attention to my wife or to my partner, to my spouse, but I also nurture my other relationships with other men, with people in my life, my extended family. Not only do I work hard and produce and contribute and be valuable in my community and in my business, but I also know when to throttle that back and rest and take time away from work and generate experiences for myself, for my family, for my loved ones. And that in all of that, I am dynamic enough that I know when to pause and quiet down and be still and connect to my higher power through that domain of spirituality. Priority is a fundamental foundation of a good man. If I am scattered, if I am preoccupied, if I'm pulled in 1,000 directions, I cannot give the appropriate amount of love and attention to all the priority in my life. Priority, prio, means first, which means that priority in life, my priorities in life, they get the first or the lion's share of my attention. That all of these priorities, all these domains receive the lion's share of my love and attention. The love, attention, and energy in my time. That my health, my financial well-being, my marriage, my fatherhood, my friendships, my spiritual life, my leisure life, that these all get the main lion's share of my attention. And if any is left over, so be it. I give that attention somewhere else. But these priorities, this fundamental pillar and foundation of a good man, this is constantly being addressed in our life. So the first foundation is presence. The second foundation is priority. I want to make sure that those priorities are met consistently, constantly, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year. Third foundation of a good man is that as a good man, we need a grounding philosophy. A grounding philosophy is that I live by principles, virtues, non-negotiables, and the rules of my life. And I'll break this down in future episodes because this ultimately really means that as a good man, there's a code that I live by, that I have a code of ethic, that I live my life by a code of value. I live my life by a code of ethic because personally to me, that ethic strengthens who I am. That ethic strengthens my authenticity, my confidence, my trust in myself, my inner power. If I have no grounding philosophy, I am going to be, I'll be buyable. I'll be transactional. I'll simply do what is immediate. I'll simply do what is only effective in this moment right here and now. I'll live my life actually by scarcity and by immediacy because I'm always looking for what's the next transaction, what's the next play. Without a grounding philosophy, we become buyable, like I said, And this grounding philosophy becomes the code that we live by. If a man doesn't live by a code, he'll become susceptible to life's ever-changing weather. And that man will be movable. He'll be buyable. He'll be transactional. He'll just simply go with the current fad and have no really grounding, rooted principle that he lives his life by. And that will create for a life of constant anxiety, constant fear, constant scarcity, and a constant state of looking over my shoulder and over my back for who's out to get me, who's out to get me next. When we prioritize our philosophy, when we live by a particular code, we are constantly strengthening and grooving the inner muscle of our way of thinking, our emotionality, the feeling we live our life by, the victory of our own authenticity. We start to value that the code that we live by is our inner reward. We stop relying and even needing external validation over and over and over again. We stop the knee-jerk reaction to be liked all the time and have everyone see the world the way we do. No, it's simply we start to live into a value that this is generated by my own internal code, my own internal philosophy, the principles that I live my life by, the virtues that I live my life by, the rules that I live my life by, and the non-negotiables that I live my life by. That is the reward. When I start to use certain ways of being, like generosity and honesty, when I start to use that as a way of getting something from someone else, that loses the sincerity of the principle itself, and that principle now becomes a strategy. I now become manipulative and conniving because I'm doing all of that for an outcome, rather than I live my life by my philosophy, because my philosophy is the reward itself. My generosity is the reward itself. My contribution and my honesty and my authenticity is the reward itself. We can't understand that and we can't experience that if we don't have a guiding philosophy. So that's the third foundation and fundamental of a good man. The fourth is purpose. And purpose simply means that I am a contribution and that my life is generative. That I live my life on purpose. I live my life deliberately. I live my life with intentionality. That what I do, who I am, how I act, and how I speak is deliberate. It's intentional. It's on purpose. And then I use that purpose as the fuel that generates what I do and what I don't do. And that purpose, at the heart of that purpose, is always the intention and the driving force to be of contribution. It's to generate is to influence and impact and contribute something of value. When I don't live my life purposefully, when I don't feed that fundamental foundation of a good man of purpose, when I'm not generative, then I become a degenerate. I become degenerative. And in the living of being a degenerate ultimately means that I'm now a taker in life. I'm robbing others of energy, of opportunity, because I haven't been able to alchemize my selfishness into impact. I haven't been able to alchemize my selfishness of me to how do I get, rather to alchemize that and how do I give and contribute something of impact, something of value, something of generativeness. And I do that deliberately, intentionally, and on purpose. And those are the four fundamental foundations of a good man. Is to be present, to be prioritized, to have my philosophy, and to be purposeful. And when those become the blueprint that I live my life by, I have the opportunity every day to polish my lens, to exercise that muscle of what it means to be a good man, what it means to be present, what it means to be prioritized, what it means to have my philosophy, what it means to be purposeful. And that's an ever-evolving constitution. That's an ever-evolving blueprint. And it's a every day that blueprint gets erased, and every day I get to exercise it again and again and again with consistency, with mastery, with ambition, with all of my inner ways of being, that every day this is an opportunity for me to demonstrate being a good man. Am I present? Am I prioritized? Am I living by my philosophy and my code? Am I living a life of purpose? And if the answer to that right now in this moment is no, that's okay. Honesty is the place that really clears the space. It brings us to this moment. And with a level of honesty and with a level of courage, I could start to re-navigate. I could start to recalibrate. I could start to redesign myself, because now I have this blueprint I can live by. Am I being present? Am I doing the work? Am I excavating that history that's keeping me trapped and limited and in a form of self-sabotage and scarcity? Am I giving my time, love, and attention to the things that are most essential and priority in life? Am I making my mind and my heart and my body strong in my health? Am I nurturing my marriage? Am I shepherding my family? Am I being a contribution in my business and in my financial well-being and in my relationships? And if the answer is no, that's good, that's honest. And do I have a code that I live by? Do I have a grounding philosophy? Am I living by it, or am I just giving lip service to it? And if the answer is no, I don't, that's good, that's honest. And am I living purposefully, or am I just on automatic? Am I just degenerative? Am I just taking and keep convincing myself or lying to myself that one day I'll generate something great? And if the answer is no, that's honest. Let's start with a place of honesty, and then let's recalibrate. Because, like I said earlier, when you are a good man for long enough, you'll become great. And when we start to emphasize our time, love, and energy to these 4 fundamental foundations of a good man, we start to live from a place of mastery rather than from a place of immediacy and scarcity. And that mastery over time becomes just simply ingrained in who we are. We shift from knowing to knowing how to knowingness. Knowing is conceptual. Yeah, I think this would really benefit my life. Knowing how is building the skill set that it does actually affect your life. And then knowingness is just the complete embodiment of your own mastery. This is just who I am and the way that I live my life by. That's the ultimate goal. And when we have enough men living that way, living foundationally, living from their code, living from a deeper sense of purpose and a deeper sense of presence and a deeper sense of contribution and priority, I think we have an opportunity to shift the whole culture, to shift the future of who we are and where we're headed collectively together. And that's my goal here. That's my goal to these conversations. That's my goal to this podcast, is to pass this philosophy on to my son. And in the process of doing that, shine a light so that other men could follow an opportunity and a path that I know for me has changed the course of my life, that has created an impact in my life that I can't even quantify. And so again, I'm so happy that you're with me on this journey and that we're on this journey together, and to constantly reiterate and live by the mantra and the definition that a good man is fully engaged in his life, that he's a contribution to those around him, and that he's in possession of himself. And as we continue to redesign that, redefine that, and keep living into that narrative and that conversation, and keep living into that, navigating that blueprint, that roadmap, I think we create a future that is absolutely incredible and That's the evolution of where we are. That's the evolution of this conversation. Remember, too, it's not about choose one over the other. It's about how do we harmonize it all. We're here for each other. Masculinity and femininity need each other. Men and women need each other and everything in between. And when we harmonize that, we create a whole new way of operating and a whole new world that we could live into and be proud of to leave to the legacy and our children and our grandchildren after that. So that's why I'm doing this. That's why I'm on this journey. And I can't be more excited that you're on this journey with me. That being said, we'll pause it here until the next episode, until we see each other again. Be a good man, live a good life, and determine each of those for yourself.